Today we're looking at the drums of Oxygene Part 4 by Jean-Michel Jarre. This is a true classic and a surprise hit that spearheaded the 70s synthesizer revolution. It was also recorded entirely at home, which was an absolute novelty back then. While we'll be using the Syntakt, you don't necessarily need one. We made a sample pack with all the drum sounds which you can download right now for free on our Patreon. But we also show you how you can make these vintage Minipop 7 drum sounds from scratch. It's very straightforward and many of the techniques can be used on other machines as well. Hello everyone, this is... This episode of Drum Patterns Explained is going to be a little different. And that's because we have to make one important change before we even start to program the pattern. To explain why, we're going to listen to the finished rhythm first. Yes, it really is just this one bar rhythm repeating throughout the entire song. Listen to the hi-hats. I'll turn down the tempo so you can hear it more clearly. The hi-hats aren't going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This means we need triplets. Let's see how we can do that. Here's another sequencer where we can see multiple tracks at the same time. Kicks on the bottom, hi-hats on top. Normally each of these steps represents a 16th note, like you just heard. But I can actually change the speed at which a pattern is played in relation to the main tempo. Here this feature is called division, but you also might encounter it as pattern speed or pattern scale. Ultimately, you can think of this as a tempo multiplier. For example, a double multiplier makes this track run twice as fast. This effectively doubles the resolution and gives us 32nd note hi-hats. For Oxygene, we need a 3/4 tempo multiplier. Watch closely. In the time the lower track goes through 4 steps, the upper one only plays 3. While the lower track needs all 16 steps to complete 1 bar, the upper one only needs 3/4 of that, 12. So let's shorten the upper track's length accordingly. Now you can see that they have the same duration. They always restart together on step 1 at the beginning of each bar. This 3/4 tempo multiplier, or 8th triplet division, is what we want on the entire drum pattern for Oxygene. So let's apply that to a fresh pattern. And also shorten it to 1 bar, 12 steps. On Elektron sequencers, just press Function and Page. Here you can set the pattern length and the tempo multiplier. So, good thing we cleared that up, or else we would have had a pretty miserable time programming the pattern. By the way, if you want to read up on that, then take a look at this. We're starting to write a book over on Patreon, which we're continually updating with new chapters. And the most recent one is about tempo multipliers. Jean-Michel Jarre used the Korg Minipop 7 drum machine on the Oxygene album. It's an all-analog preset rhythm box similar to the Roland CR78. It has these incredibly charming vintage sounds, which we'll try to emulate here. I already had a go at these in our Syntakt review 2 years ago, but I put some more time into it, and I think these new ones are a lot better. So let's start designing the sounds. This is going to be a very unfancy kick. We're basically aiming for a muffled thud here. We'll use the BD Silky machine. What we definitely don't want in there is a frequency slide or a pitch bend. This downchirp is more of a modern post-909 thing, so I'll dial it down completely. And finally, we're going to use a high-pass filter to bring out some of the low frequencies. In case you've never tried that before, yes, it might seem a little counterintuitive to use a high pass or low cut when we want to accentuate the bass frequencies. But turning up the resonance will actually cause a boost right at the cutoff frequency. If we can generate a very short click or transient, we can turn it into a vintage rim shot. On the Syntakt, the utility impulse machine does exactly that. And just like on the kick, we're going to agitate this sound with a resonant high-pass filter. This immediately brings out that wooden quality you associate with claves or wood sticks. We can fine-tune the parameters of the impulse to make it more aggressive, like on the Mini Pop 7. This is the rhythmic foundation of the song, and you can already hear kind of a bossa nova feeling coming through. Let's pick one of the digital tracks for a change. The PC Carbon machine has this cute little bongo icon next to it, which is a clear sign that we should use it. The pattern actually uses two bongo sounds, high and low. But we don't have to create a second bongo, we can just sequence different note pitches. Okay, so you might think if the PC Carbon machine works so well for the bongos, why not also use it for the conga? But I actually think the BD Modern Kick machine is even better suited. There is no parameter for the transient or click on this machine, but we can just add a smidge of attack on the amp envelope to soften it out. While we're at it, we can also use the hold and decay to trim the sound. For the tambourine, we're going to start with a noise burst, so let's pick the utility noise machine. Can you hear this faint whistling noise that's still playing? That's always a risk when turning up the resonance. But we can solve this very easily with an amp envelope that kills the output after the sound. I want to save the fourth analog track for the hi-hats, so for the cymbal, we'll use one of the digital tracks. The Cymbal machine can be used as a noise source. Now listen as I turn up the resonance, how this brings out that nice grainy and fizzy quality. A very simple closed-head classic. Pretty much what it says on the box, and we can leave most settings at default. Except for the overdrive. This will give the heads more punch without changing the basic character. And we're going to shave a bit off the high frequencies with the low-pass filter. We don't want it to sound too bright and modern, do we? And now the final piece of the puzzle, the Quijada. This is arguably the most interesting mini-pop sound and also the hardest one to imitate. A real Quijada is actually a cleaned and dried animal jawbone, like that of a donkey. When you strike the jawbone, the teeth rattle, which creates that unique sound. You might be more familiar with its modern equivalent, the Vibraslap. So anyway, here's what I got. Okay, so your first thought may be, what the hell is this? And rightfully so. This is definitely an atonal mess. But it's an atonal mess we can sculpt into a Quijada. I used a Cymbal machine to get two very low-pitched square wave oscillators. They are slightly detuned against each other and there's some overdrive on them. Then I used a square wave LFO to quickly turn the volume up and down, really harsh and fast. This is what makes our Quijada rattle. Then a high-pass filter to get rid of the unwanted lower frequencies. And once again, resonance is the magic ingredient. The filter is too static at the moment, so I added an envelope that brings some movement into the filter cutoff. And finally, a second LFO. This one actually controls the first LFO so that the rattling slows down. You can hear it when I hold the note. At some point it will also speed up again. But the Quijada sound will never be played that long, and to make absolutely sure of that, I'll slap an AHD envelope on there. What's interesting is that on the original Mini-Pop 7 you can only get this rhythm if you use a hidden feature that was not in the manual. You have to press in two preset buttons at the same time, Begin and Slow Rock. By itself I'd describe this rhythm as cheerful and bouncy, maybe reminiscent of a trotting pony. But it's all about context. As the backbone in one of Jean-Michel Jarre's greatest compositions, its minimalistic sounds become a pure understatement that beautifully contrasts with the large synthesizer soundscapes. There's one fact about the recording of Oxygene that always cracks me up. Jean-Michel Jarre didn't have polysynths to play chords and such, so he meticulously layered multiple recordings of his monosynths on top of each other. The problem is that the tape noise also kept adding up. And to cover that up, he simply leaned into it and performed some more noise on top of it.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
And as always, a big shout out to all of our patrons. Thanks to your support, we can keep making these videos.
Tiny